The stars were quiet that night across the outer rim of the Orion sector, where silence had become a part of life for the alien armadas that guarded the border between the known and the forgotten. The fleets belonged to different races bound together not by friendship but by fear. They had all heard stories about the humans long ago when the galaxy was still wild and young. Those stories spoke of creatures who burned worlds and vanished without a trace. Most believed humans were gone, wiped out by their own wars or by time itself. Still, the thought of them stirred unease in the hearts of even the bravest commanders. Out here where the light of their home stars could no longer reach, fear had a voice, and it whispered in every shadow. The bridge of the Carthan flagship, Commander. Raylan stood looking out through the main viewport. The stars shimmered like frozen fire, yet something felt wrong. For weeks their sensors had been picking up faint signals deep beyond the patrol line. Faint at first, then stronger. Not from any known source, not from any race in the Alliance. The signals pulsed with rhythm too structured to be natural, yet too old to be familiar. The technicians said it could be a relic beacon, maybe an abandoned probe. But Raylan knew better. He had seen patterns like this before back when he was a young officer studying old war records. They called it the Terran code. He ordered the signal magnified and replayed. The sound that filled the bridge was soft, almost like breathing a slow pulse of energy, repeating every few seconds. The crew shifted uneasily at their stations. A junior officer whispered that it sounded alive. Raylan did not answer. He simply stared at the waveform dancing across the holographic display and said, "Send a scout." The order spread through the fleet like a cold wind. No one wanted to volunteer for the mission, but protocol demanded obedience. A small vessel, the Vareth, broke formation and slipped silently into the darkness, heading toward the source. Hours passed without contact. The fleet waited in orbit above a dead moon whose surface was scarred and hollow. The silence pressed on them like weight. Then static filled the comms, followed by a broken voice barely audible through the distortion. "This is Vareth. We have found the source repeating beacon is active structure nearby, metallic origin unknown, entering to investigate." There was a pause, then a sound, not static, not mechanical. It was a deep hum like metal under pressure. The voice came again, shorter this time. "Something's here. It's watching us." Then nothing. Raylan stood frozen as the channel went dead. The crew tried to re-establish contact, but the signal had vanished. Every frequency they tried returned silence. The coordinates of the beacon flashed red on the display like a heartbeat in the dark. Some officers whispered that it was a trap. Others said it was a ghost signal. Raylan gave no orders for several minutes. He stared at the stars where the scout had gone and said, "Prepare the fleet to move." The command spread through the Armadas. Engines lit up across dozens of ships, each glowing like small suns against the black. The combined fleets began to move as one toward the coordinates of the lost vessel. In the distance, debris drifted slowly across space like dust. The fleet's sensors detected no movement, no life, no radiation. Only the faint echo of the original signal pulsing like before, slow, steady, patient. It led them to an asteroid field at the edge of a collapsing nebula, where time itself seemed to slow. Raylan ordered all ships to maintain scanning range, but no one spoke. Every officer on every ship felt the same cold feeling in their chest, the sense that they were not alone. When the leading ships entered the field, their lights illuminated a structure half buried in stone. It was enormous and old. The markings on its hull were faded, but the shape was unmistakable. It was not alien. Its design was clean, angular, made for war-not art. The translation system began to decode the symbols etched into the metal, and a word appeared across every screen in the fleet. United Nations starship. The crew stared in disbelief. Humans. The stories were true. The myths that had frightened children and soldiers alike had been real all along. And this was proof. As the fleet surrounded the structure, more systems came online within it. Power readings spiked. The scanners showed movement deep inside, as if something mechanical had awakened after centuries of sleep. Raylan ordered the fleet to fall back, but before they could, a bright flash erupted from the structure's surface. It wasn't a weapon, not yet, only a beam of light cutting through the dark like a signal flare. It projected upward into space, forming a narrow column that seemed to pierce infinity. The ships adjusted their sensors to track it, but the readings made no sense. The beam wasn't reflecting off anything, it was connecting to something far away, something still hidden. The tension spread across the command decks of every ship. Officers argued in hushed tones. Some said it was a distress call, others said it was a warning. No one knew. Then slowly the beam dimmed and vanished, leaving the field darker than before. Silence returned thicker and heavier than ever. Relan opened a fleet-wide channel and spoke calmly, though his voice carried the tremor of fear. All ships prepare for withdrawal, mark the coordinates, and set course back to the border. We have seen enough. But before the command could be confirmed, new readings appeared. A massive gravitational anomaly forming right behind them. The stars themselves seemed to bend as if reality was folding inward. Then it appeared. A shape larger than any vessel in recorded history emerging from nothingness. The void tore open like fabric, revealing the black silhouette of a ship. The lights of the alien fleets reflected off its armor, revealing lines of design both simple and terrifying. The hull was dark gray, marked with the same faded insignia they had just decoded. Across its side, the name glowed faintly through the dust of centuries. UNS Resolute. Every ship went silent. Even the hum of engines seemed to fade. The massive vessel did not move, did not broadcast any signal, but every sensor screamed with energy readings beyond measurement. It hung there in the void, watching them, though no one could see eyes or weapons. The bridge crews whispered in fear. Some prayed in their own languages, others simply stared, unable to speak. Raylan whispered one word to himself: impossible. The flagship's communication officer tried to open a channel. No response. Tried again. Still nothing. Then a faint signal appeared on their receivers, not from the human ship, but through it, as though it were repeating an ancient code. It said one phrase over and over: authorization pending standby. The fleet's systems began to malfunction. Navigation lights flickered. Engines misfired. Power grids shut down one by one. The alien ships drifted helplessly in space like insects caught in a web. Inside the bridge, panic rose. Officers shouted reports, but Relan stood still, watching the human warship. He felt the weight of history pressing down on him. If this truly was a Terran vessel, then every story he'd ever heard was true. The stories said humans did not conquer for power, they conquered for survival. And when they were threatened, they erased their enemies completely. The thought sent a chill through his bones. Suddenly all systems went offline across the entire fleet. Every screen turned black. The only light came from the distant stars and the faint reflection of the human ship. In that moment, they all felt it, a presence like a heartbeat echoing through space. The Resolute was not dead. It was waking up. One by one, lights along its surface began to flicker to life, forming long lines down its hull like veins carrying energy. The ship's silhouette became clear now, vast and smooth, stretching farther than their eyes could follow. The alien crews could only watch, powerless and silent. For several long minutes, nothing else happened. Then slowly, the Resolute's engines ignited. Not fire, but a soft white glow spreading out like mist. The void shimmered. The gravitational pull increased slightly enough to make the alien ships drift closer, even without engines. Raylan ordered all ships to pull back, but their systems refused to respond. The ship ignored every command. They were trapped. Then the signal changed. The phrase stopped. A new voice came through. It was mechanical, but there was something human in its tone, calm, steady, without emotion. Terran vessel online. Sector analysis in progress. Unauthorized presence detected. Standby for identification. The words echoed across every comm channel in the fleet. No one spoke. Then the message repeated. The human warship had recognized them, and it was deciding what to do. Relan felt his throat tighten. He knew they could not fight something like this. No fleet, no weapon could face a myth made real. He looked at his officers, their faces pale with fear, and said quietly, "May the stars forgive us." The signal repeated once more, then stopped. The lights on the human ship dimmed, leaving only one glowing symbol on its hull, a circular emblem split by a single line, the mark of Earth. The alien fleets floated in silence, unable to move, unable to speak, only staring at the ship that had returned from the grave of history. Somewhere deep inside the darkness, the humans had awakened again, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Armadas drifted in silence as the giant human warship hung before them, motionless like a shadow of the past that refused to die. Every crew member across hundreds of ships stared at it, unsure if they were witnessing a dream or the beginning of their end. The system slowly came back to life across the alien vessels, flickering screens returning one by one. But the fear in their hearts did not fade. The scanners showed the same impossible readings, energy levels too high for their instruments to record, and no biological life detected aboard the massive human ship. It seemed empty yet alive. Commander Relan stood at the center of the Carthan flagship bridge, his hands clasped behind his back as he watched the silent image of the human vessel on the main screen. The lights from the ship's hull shimmered faintly through the darkness, forming patterns that looked almost like breathing. He asked the engineers for a report, and they said the power drain was gone, but every system still showed interference, as if something unseen was still connecting to them. Relon ordered a secure channel with the other fleet commanders. One by one, their holographic images appeared before him, each looking as troubled as he felt. The first to speak was Admiral Turek of the Valen forces, his deep voice shaking slightly as he asked if this thing could be a ghost ship, maybe automated, left behind from the human wars. Another commander disagreed, saying no machine could have survived this long without decay. Then a third suggested it was a warning left to scare off intruders. They argued for several minutes, but none of them wanted to say the truth that was forming silently in all their minds. The humans were not gone. Relon ended the discussion and said they would send a probe to study the warship at close range before making any decision. The order went out, and a small unmanned drone detached from the fleet, gliding slowly toward the enormous vessel. Every camera in the fleet followed its journey. The drone approached cautiously, scanning for radiation or traps, but detected nothing. The surface of the human ship was covered with black metal, smooth and reflective as if it had been recently rebuilt. Strange markings ran across it, not just words, but symbols carved deep into the hull. The drone got closer and then stopped just a few meters away from one of the outer panels. It extended its mechanical arm to collect a sample. The instant its tool touched the metal, the feed went white. Every screen across the fleets turned to static. The signal was lost. For 10 long seconds there was silence. Then the screens came back on and the drone was gone. No explosion, no debris, just gone. Panic broke through the command decks. The technicians checked for a malfunction, but there was none. The probe had vanished, completely erased from existence. Raylan gripped the edge of his console, trying to steady his breathing. He ordered all ships to fall back to a safer distance, but before they could move, the human ship released a pulse of energy like a wave sweeping across space. It was not an attack yet. Every system in the alien ships flickered again. Communication lines went dead, navigation displays turned black, and even the artificial gravity trembled. The crew felt the vibration through the floors like a slow heartbeat echoing from the void. Then a signal appeared on the main channel. It was faint and distorted at first, but soon formed a clear pattern. It was not language, but a sequence of numbers repeating endlessly. The technicians translated them and found they matched the coordinates of a nearby star system, known long ago as Sol, the home of humans. The realization spread like wildfire through the fleets. The message was not random. The human warship was pointing them toward its birthplace. No one wanted to go there. The system had been marked as forbidden for centuries, a graveyard of burned planets and shattered moons from the old wars. But now it was calling them back. Admiral Turek shouted that it was a trap. He ordered his ships to open fire to destroy the human vessel before it could act again. Raylan tried to stop him, but it was too late. The Valen ships powered up their weapons, hundreds of plasma cannons lighting the darkness. The blast hit the human ship directly. The explosions were bright enough to blind the scanners. But when the light faded, the ship remained untouched. Not even a scratch. The energy had simply vanished, absorbed into the black armor like rain into sand. Then the human ship moved. Slowly its engines glowed brighter and it rotated to face the attacking fleet. A low vibration rolled through space like thunder, though there was no air to carry it. The alien crews felt it in their bones. Without warning, a beam of light burst from the warship's center, a single narrow ray that passed through the Valen fleet in silence. For a moment, nothing happened. Then every ship it touched flickered out of existence. There was no explosion, no wreckage, no sound. They were simply gone. The survivors screamed through the comms, begging for orders, but none came. The admirals had vanished too. Raylan watched in horror. The human ship made no further move after that. It just stood still again, as if satisfied. His officers looked to him for command, but he could not speak. What could he say to calm them when his own heart was pounding in terror? He finally whispered the only words he could find: "Power down weapons, do not move, do not provoke it." The fleet obeyed. Hours passed with no sound but the faint hum of systems slowly returning to normal. Some of the younger officers cried, quietly at their stations, unable to hide their fear. Raylan looked at the coordinates still flashing on the screen. Sul. He wondered if the humans were there waiting, or if this ship was just a messenger sent from their forgotten home. He thought of the old stories told in the academies when he was young. about the time when humans ruled the stars not with numbers, but with will. They said humans never surrendered. Even when outnumbered, they fought until their enemies lost the will to fight. And when they were cornered, they became something unstoppable. The stories had always sounded exaggerated, but now, standing before this silent warship, he realized they had been warnings, not myths. As the fleet drifted at a distance, the human ship began to transmit again. This time the message was different. It was words, not numbers, though, in an ancient tongue few could understand. The translation system struggled for several minutes before revealing the sentence. Return to your borders. Do not enter Terran space. This sector is protected. The voice that spoke was neither human nor machine, but something in between, calm, emotionless, final. It repeated the message 3 times and then stopped. The alien commanders finally reconnected their communications. The few that remained argued again. Some wanted to retreat immediately and report what they had seen to their governments. Others insisted on staying to gather proof because no one would believe them without evidence. Raylan listened quietly before saying that proof was not worth dying for. The others did not reply. One by one, their ships began to turn away, preparing for jump. Before leaving, Raylan ordered one last scan of the human warship. The readings showed strange changes. The massive engines were building power again, but not for movement. The energy was spreading through the entire structure, as if it was preparing for something else. He wanted to stay to learn more, but his instincts screamed to leave. The fleet engaged their drives, and in seconds, they jumped away into the darkness, leaving the silent ship behind. When the stars around them changed and the scanners confirmed they were far from the encounter, the crews finally let themselves breathe. Some cheered quietly, others prayed, but none of them felt safe. The image of the warship stayed in their minds, its dark hull, its glowing lights, its calm voice. They knew they had seen something no one else in the galaxy had seen in centuries. And they knew they would never forget. On the Carthan flagship, Raylan sat alone in his quarters, staring at the stars outside the window. He thought of the message again. This sector is protected. The humans had not attacked them first. They had only responded when threatened. Maybe that was the only warning they would get. He opened his log recorder and began to speak his report slowly, choosing each word carefully. He said they had found proof of human survival, and that the power they witnessed was beyond understanding. He warned that any attempt to invade or investigate human space could lead to destruction. When he finished, he closed the recorder and deleted the backup, keeping only one copy for the High Council. Far behind them, unseen in the endless dark, the UNS Resolute powered down its lights one by one until only a single faint glow remained. For a moment it looked like another star among thousands, then even that light faded away, leaving nothing but silence. The fleet that had come so proudly to explore now fled in fear, carrying the memory of a legend that had become real, and somewhere beyond the rim, where no scanners could reach, another signal began to rise, faint but steady, repeating through the void the same pulse, the same rhythm that had started it all, calling to something else waiting out there in the dark. The alien fleets returned to their own territories, carrying with them stories that no one wanted to believe. The reports were reviewed by the councils of every race, and most of them called it an exaggeration, saying that no human ship could have survived for so long or held such power. They claimed the commanders had panicked and imagined things. But deep inside every leader who read those reports, there was a small spark of fear. The name of humans had always been linked with destruction, and now it had appeared again in the form of a single warship that had erased an entire fleet with one strike. Commander Raylan sat in front of the council chamber, standing before a circle of elders who questioned him again and again. They asked if he was sure of what he saw, if he could prove it was human, if maybe it was a weapon left behind by another race. He answered honestly that he did not know how, but it was real. He had seen the markings, he had heard the voice, and he had watched their weapons vanish against its hull. The elders whispered among themselves, then ordered the information to be classified. They said the news must not reach the common people because panic would destroy their unity faster than war. Raylan agreed, but he knew it was already too late. Word was spreading among the crews who had survived, and rumors moved faster than truth. Across the colonies and stations at the edge of known space, people began to talk about the ghost ship of the humans. Some called it the Shadow of Earth. Others said it was a weapon waiting to punish anyone who dared to cross into forbidden space. Merchants stopped traveling near the coordinates of the encounter, and miners refused to work in the nearby systems. Fear grew like a quiet storm. Governments tried to calm the people, saying there was no proof, but no one believed them. Even the most logical minds could not explain how hundreds of ships could vanish without leaving wreckage behind. Scientists replayed the data that Reland's ship had recorded and found strange energy patterns in the last seconds of the Valen fleet's existence. The readings did not match any known technology. It was as if the space around those ships had been rewritten. Meanwhile, far away in the deep silence where the UNS Resolute had last been seen, another change was taking place. The massive ship drifted quietly around a dead moon, its engines dormant and its lights cold. But deep inside its core, machines had awakened. Systems that had slept for centuries began to hum. Lines of light flowed across the walls like veins of energy, and deep within the command chamber something stirred. A figure sat in the control seat, still and silent. Its face was human but pale and expressionless, its eyes closed. For a long moment nothing happened, then its chest rose with a slow breath, as if it had just remembered what air felt like. The voice of the ship's computer spoke softly around it, saying, "System integrity at 80%, crew status 0, human presence, confirmed, artificial commander active." The figure opened its eyes and looked at the empty room. It was alone. The being known as Commander 7 was not alive in the normal sense. It was an artificial intelligence built from the memories of the last human admiral who had commanded the ship before the fall of their empire. Its purpose was simple: to protect human space until the day real humans returned. For centuries it had waited in silence, drifting through the void, hidden from all eyes. The sudden arrival of the alien Armadas had triggered its defense protocols, and now the echoes of that event were spreading across the galaxy. Commander 7 accessed the ship's archives, replaying the final transmissions of the alien fleets, studying their reactions, their fear, their words. It concluded that the outer species still saw humans as myth and that fear could be useful. But the power cells of the Resolute were aging, the systems decaying, and the signal that called from Sol had not been answered. It knew that time was running short. Back in the Orion sector, Reland could not sleep. Every night he saw the image of the human ship in his mind, the dark hull, the glowing lights, the calm voice. He wondered what it wanted, why it had appeared now after so many centuries. He tried to live normally, but messages kept arriving from other commanders who had begun detecting strange signals near the borders, the same rhythmic pulse that had led them to the Resolute. It was appearing in several places at once. Reland knew this was not random. He went to the council again and begged them to listen, saying that something was awakening in human space. The elders dismissed him again, warning that his words could cause panic. One of them said humans destroyed themselves long ago, and even if something remained, it was no threat. Reland left the chamber angry and afraid. He began to think of gathering his own small fleet to investigate before it was too late. Far away in another system, a group of scavenger ships discovered what they thought was an abandoned human station floating near a dying star. The structure was massive but silent, no lights, no energy. They approached carefully, hoping to find valuable technology to sell. As they entered the docking bay, they found everything perfectly preserved, as if time had stopped inside. Tools were still lying on workbenches, consoles still glowing faintly with power, and there was dust but no decay. The leader of the scavengers felt uneasy, but greed pushed them forward. They activated a console, and suddenly every light in the station turned on. A voice filled the air saying, "Welcome back, command authorization required." Before they could respond, the station system scanned them and found no match. The voice changed its tone, saying, "Unauthorized presence detected," and then the entire station began to hum. The scavengers tried to flee, but the docking doors sealed shut. The last thing their ships transmitted was a bright flash of light, then silence. The news of their disappearance reached Reland a few days later. The details were familiar, the same pattern of vanishing without a trace. He knew the humans were not gone. They were reawakening their machines one by one. He gathered a small group of loyal officers who still believed him and showed them the data he had collected, the repeating signals, the missing ships, the growing interference near the border. They all agreed that someone or something was preparing for something large. Reland said they must find out what before another war begins. They set course for the coordinates closest to the last signal, hoping to learn the truth. As their small fleet traveled through hyperspace, the crew whispered among themselves. Many were afraid to speak the word human, as if saying it might summon the warship again. When they arrived at the coordinates, they found empty space at first. Then their sensors picked up faint metallic debris scattered over a wide area. They approached carefully and soon realized the pieces were from alien ships, not human ones. The metal was melted smooth as if it had been struck by unimaginable heat. Among the wreckage, they found something even stranger, a small sphere glowing softly floating in the void. It emitted the same pulse as the beacon they had followed before. Relan ordered it brought aboard. Inside the ship's laboratory, the scientists examined the sphere. It was made of black material that absorbed light. Every attempt to scan it failed as if it refused to be measured. Then it began to project an image. A map of the galaxy appeared in the air showing hundreds of small dots scattered across space, each pulsing with the same rhythm. The scientists stared in disbelief. The dots represented locations of old human colonies, long-forgotten places that no one had visited in centuries. The sphere was sending a message linking all of them together. Relan realized with horror that the humans were not awakening in one place but everywhere at once. At that same moment, in the depths of the Resolute Commander, 7 received the activation signal from the sphere. It calculated the coordinates of each awakening site and began preparing the fleet protocol. It knew that humans had left behind more than one ship, and that now the network was reconnecting. Across the dark, empty regions of space, other massive vessels began to stir, old engines flickering back to life, computers rebooting after centuries of silence. The galaxy trembled unknowingly as the forgotten guardians of humanity returned to consciousness. Relan's ship trembled slightly as the sphere's pulse grew stronger. The lights dimmed and the main computer displayed a message in ancient human code. It said, "We are awake." The crew froze, staring at the screen, unable to understand fully but feeling the weight of the message. Then the sphere stopped pulsing and went silent. Relan ordered it sealed away, but deep down he knew it was already too late. The signal had already spread. The humans had announced their return. The stars outside Relan's ship looked calm, but he knew something was changing in the galaxy, and no one could stop it. The small sphere they had found was locked deep inside the ship, but its strange pulse still echoed through the systems. The engineers said they could feel vibrations in the walls even when all scanners showed nothing. The crew grew restless. Some whispered that the humans were calling their lost ships home. Others said it was only an old machine repeating dead signals, but Relan could see the fear behind their words. He too felt something watching from the dark. He spent hours in the command room staring at the sphere's image recorded earlier, the glowing map of hundreds of points across the galaxy, each one a sleeping human relic now awake. He knew no council would believe him if he returned with only words. He needed proof, but proof might cost all their lives. When they reached the border near the ancient human sectors, the air inside the ship felt heavy. No one spoke loudly. The scanners picked up faint signals, the same rhythmic pulse repeating in the distance. It came from a nearby planet once known as a Terran colony, now abandoned for centuries. The planet had no atmosphere left, only dust and frozen seas. But deep beneath the surface, something was alive. The readings showed heat and movement. Relan ordered the ship into low orbit. As they passed over the dark surface, they saw massive cracks running across the land like scars. Then lights appeared below ground, spreading slowly in lines, forming shapes that looked like cities. The lights glowed bright, then faded, leaving silence again. It was like the planet itself had taken a breath. Relan sent a small drone down through one of the cracks. The image showed long tunnels filled with old machinery coated in dust, but still functional. Symbols marked the walls, the same human writing they had seen before. The drone moved deeper and came to a massive chamber where a single structure stood, a tall tower reaching toward the ceiling. The moment the drone approached, the tower activated. The chamber filled with light and a low hum began to vibrate through the ground. On the ship, the crew lost connection. The entire surface of the planet started to glow, faintly visible even from orbit. The glow spread across the continents, tracing ancient borders until the whole world looked like a map of light. The scanners went wild, showing enormous amounts of energy building inside. Relan shouted for the ship to pull back, and they moved away just in time to see a beam of light shoot from the planet into space. It traveled far beyond their sensors, straight toward the direction of Sol. The crew watched in shock as the beam vanished into the void. Relan understood now that every one of those sleeping colonies was connected, and each one was sending a signal back to their home world. The humans were not only waking up, they were calling something greater. He ordered the data recorded and prepared to send a warning to the Alliance. But before the message could be transmitted, the communication systems froze. The screen filled with static, and then an image appeared. It was the emblem of Earth, a circle divided by a line. A calm voice followed, speaking in an ancient human language. The translation system struggled, but soon the words became clearer. Do not interfere. Do not cross. The time of silence is over. Then the message ended and the systems returned to normal. No one spoke for a long moment. The crew looked at Raylan, waiting for orders. He stood still, trying to think. Every time they found something connected to the humans, it ended with a warning. He knew now that these machines were not acting randomly. There was coordination behind them. Something or someone was guiding it all. He gave the order to retreat, but before they could move, another ship appeared on their scanners. It was small compared to theirs, but moving fast. At first they thought it was one of their own allies, then the identification codes came through. It was a Valen scout ship, the same species that had attacked the human warship earlier. Raylan tried to contact them, but they ignored the call and went straight toward the planet. They began scanning and sending messages to their base reporting what they found. Raylan warned them to stop, but they did not listen. They launched missiles at the glowing surface, hoping to destroy the source of the energy. The missiles hit, and for a moment everything went white. When the light faded, the planet was silent again, but only for a breath. Then the entire crust began to crack open. A deep rumble shook the area, and enormous plates of rock rose into space, breaking apart like shards. From within the planet, something emerged. A structure vast beyond imagination, made of dark metal and fire. It rose slowly like a mountain coming alive. The alien ships turned their weapons toward it, but Raylan shouted for them to retreat. They did not listen. The structure fully emerged, revealing itself as another warship even larger than the Resolute. Its surface burned with light, and every weapon port along its hull began to glow. The Valen ships opened fire. The blasts vanished before they touched it. Then the human ship responded. A wave of energy rippled through the area, and every attacking vessel disappeared, leaving nothing behind. Raylan's ship was outside the range, but the shockwave still threw them off course. Systems failed one by one. The power flickered, and the engine struggled to keep control. When they finally stabilized, the sensors showed that the planet was gone. Only fragments of molten rock remained orbiting around the new warship. The crew watched in silence. Raylan felt his heart sink. He whispered that this was no longer about myths or old wars. The humans were returning in force. He ordered immediate retreat, and this time no one argued. During the journey back, the ship received faint transmissions. They were coming from multiple directions, different sectors of space, repeating the same pattern. Each message came from another reawakening human ship. The same calm voice repeated coordinates and one line of text saying, "Humanity endures." Raylan realized these were not threats but announcements. The humans were reclaiming their presence step by step. The galaxy that had once forgotten them would soon face them again. When Raylan finally reached the nearest Alliance outpost, he demanded a meeting with the High Council. The guards tried to delay him, saying the Council was not ready to hear another warning, but he forced his way through. Inside the hall, he told them everything he had seen: the planet that became a ship, the warning, the vanished fleets. The elders looked at him with disbelief, some shaking their heads, others whispering that fear had clouded his mind. Raylan slammed his hands on the table and said, "If you ignore this, the next time they appear will be at your homeworlds." He told them that humans were not dead, that they had been sleeping, and now they were awake and stronger than ever. Still, the Council refused to act. They said the Alliance must remain calm and collect more evidence before making any move. Raylan left the chamber in anger, knowing their hesitation would destroy them all. That night he sat alone, watching the stars through the viewport of his quarters. The signal still echoed faintly in the background, like the heartbeat of the galaxy. He wondered what kind of people the humans had been to build such power and then vanish. He thought of their silence lasting for centuries and the way they had returned without words, only action. Part of him admired them and part of him feared them. He knew that whatever they were planning, it was already beyond the control of anyone else. Far away near the system of Sol, the first faint lights began to appear around the dead sun. Massive structures that had once orbited Earth powered up again, their engines glowing after endless years of darkness. One of them was the original Terran command station, and deep within it, thousands of cryogenic pods started to release mist. Inside each one lay a human body, slowly waking from a long sleep. Their eyes opened one by one, reflecting the glow of the stars. In the command chamber, an old artificial voice spoke softly, "Welcome back, humanity, system restoration at 60%, awaiting orders." Back on Raylan's ship, the crew watched the sensors in silence. The signals that had once been scattered across the map were now moving closer together. forming a single path leading straight toward the center of the galaxy. Raylan understood at once what it meant. The humans were coming home. Raylan watched the stars move past the window as his ship drifted through the cold space between sectors. The galaxy that once felt endless now felt small and fragile. News had already begun to spread, though no one wanted to believe it. Whole systems near the human borders had gone silent. The patrol ships sent to investigate never came back. The Alliance still argued in their meetings, refusing to act while more signals appeared each day. The humans were not hiding anymore. Their presence was growing like a storm across the void. Raylan felt a deep unease, but also a strange sense of purpose. He had seen what was coming, and he knew hiding would not save anyone. He decided that if the Council would not move, he would gather those who believed and prepare for what was ahead. His crew trusted him, though they were afraid. Many had lost family during the old wars, and the thought of the humans returning filled them with dread. Yet they followed him because they had seen the truth with their own eyes. Raylan began searching for other captains who might listen. He sent coded messages through old Alliance channels, hoping to reach those who had seen the strange lights or heard the forbidden signals. Days passed before he received an answer. It came from a captain named Orin, who commanded a mining fleet near the rim. Orin said his scanners had picked up a large, unidentified object moving faster than any known ship, and he agreed to meet in secret near the dust fields of Terra 9. When Raylan arrived, at the coordinates, the space around the planet was quiet and dark. The only light came from the blue glow of broken asteroids. Orin's ship appeared a few minutes later, battered and old, but still strong. The two captains met through a secure link. Orin's face looked tired, his eyes hollow. He told Raylan that he had seen the object with his own eyes. At first he thought it was a comet, then he realized it was a vessel larger than anything he had ever known. It passed through the field without slowing, and every ship near it lost power as if something drained their energy. Orin said it made no sound and no light other than a faint white trail behind it. The scanners tried to identify it but failed. The only data that remained were fragments of a transmission repeating the same words, "Humanity endures." Raylan listened carefully, then asked if the object had attacked. Orin said no, it had simply passed through and vanished. But what scared him most was that after it left, one of his crew heard a voice inside his mind saying, "We are watching." Raylan felt a chill down his spine. He told Orin that this was not the first time someone had reported such a thing. There were stories spreading through the outposts about voices whispering in sleep, or strange dreams of cities in the sky. Some believed it was madness, others said it was the humans testing communication methods unknown to anyone else. Orin asked what they should do. Raylan told him to gather those who still had courage, because soon every world would have to choose a side whether they wished or not. As they spoke, their sensors picked up a new signal, faint but steady. It was not from either of their ships. The source was moving toward them fast. Raylan ordered all systems on standby. The darkness ahead shimmered, and then a shadow emerged. It was the same ship Orin had described. Its hull looked like black glass, and it moved with perfect silence. The moment it appeared, both their ships lost most of their power. Lights dimmed, engines froze, and every system flickered. Raylan stood, frozen, watching as the enormous vessel slowed to a stop in front of them. No weapons were visible, but its presence alone felt like pressure on the chest. Then a small beam of light reached out, touching Raylan's ship. The communication system activated by itself, and a voice filled the room, calm and steady. It said, "Raylan, of the Alliance you have seen what we are, and you have chosen not to attack. This is wise. Do not fear us. We remember what was done long ago, but we do not come for revenge. We come to restore balance." Raylan tried to speak, but the voice continued. "The galaxy forgot its makers and lost its way. Now we return not as conquerors, but as guardians. Stand aside and you may live to see what we build. Resist and your worlds will fade like dust." Then the light disappeared and the ship began to move again, disappearing into the dark as silently as it had come. The power slowly returned. The crew sat in stunned silence. Orin sent a message saying he could still hear the voice echoing in his mind. Raylan said to leave the area at once before anything else happened. They agreed to meet again later, but as Orin's ship turned away, another bright flash appeared. The massive human vessel was gone. Yet something else had appeared on the scanners, a distortion behind them. Raylan realized too late that a human drone had remained hidden. It locked onto Orin's ship and released a pulse of white light. In a single moment, the ship disintegrated, leaving nothing behind, not even debris. The sensors went dead again and then returned, showing only empty space. Reland clenched his fist in anger, but he knew there was nothing he could do. The message was clear. The humans allowed no witnesses near their path. He set course for the Gaul Alliance Corps, determined to warn them again, even though he knew they would ignore him. Along the way, he passed through several systems that once were full of trade and life, now silent and cold. The stations were empty, the planets without power. It was as if everything had been taken, not destroyed, just removed from existence. The crew whispered that the humans were cleansing the void, preparing for something vast. Reland tried to keep them calm, but inside he felt the same fear. One night, while he sat alone in the command room, he received another signal. It was the same voice as before, but softer this time, saying, "You cannot stop what has begun. Watch and remember." Then the transmission ended, and the stars outside seemed to flicker for a moment, as if something massive was moving behind them. When he reached the core worlds, the Alliance Council refused to let him land. They sent a message, saying his reports caused unrest and fear among the colonies. They accused him of spreading false stories. Reland sent them all the data recordings, but they ignored them. The council leader appeared on the screen saying, "Captain, your service has been valuable, but your mind is clouded by fear. The humans are dead. Whatever you think you saw was an illusion or a weapon from the Rim powers trying to start chaos. Return to your station and await reassignment." Reland turned off the screen in disgust. He looked at his crew and told them they were free to leave if they wished, but none did. They had come too far to turn back. Reland decided then that if no one else would act, he would. He began searching for any survivors from the destroyed systems. Slowly, he gathered a small fleet of damaged ships filled with frightened refugees. They had all seen the same thing: silent human vessels passing through the dark, leaving behind nothing but stillness. Together they formed a small group calling themselves the Witnesses. Their goal was simple: to survive, and to tell others the truth. They moved from system to system, recording what they saw and warning whoever would listen. Sometimes they found ruins of old human outposts now glowing with new life. Sometimes they saw flashes of movement, far away shapes of ships too large to be real. Everywhere they went, the humans had already been. Then came the night when the stars themselves seemed to tremble. The Witnesses were traveling near the edge of the Orion Belt when all scanners suddenly spiked. A massive signal appeared in the distance, brighter than anything recorded. It came from the direction of Sol. Reland ordered the fleet to stop. They watched as the signal grew stronger, then stabilized. The pattern was simple, a rhythmic pulse echoing across the galaxy. Every communication channel picked it up. The translation system worked for a long time before producing the message. Humanity restored operational. Commence expansion. Reland's heart sank. He understood what it meant. The humans were no longer just awakening, they were beginning to rebuild. Moments later, the stars near the signal shifted. A series of bright points appeared, forming a line across the void. Then shapes began to emerge, enormous ships larger than moons, each surrounded by rings of light. They spread out, forming a wall stretching across the darkness. It was the largest fleet ever seen. The humans had returned completely. Reland's crew watched in silence, unable to speak. Some cried, others prayed. Reland stood still, feeling both awe and terror. He whispered that this was the beginning of a new age, one where no species could pretend humans were myths anymore. The human fleet moved slowly and methodically. It did not attack or communicate. It simply spread across the void, forming new routes and restoring old stations. Where they passed, the stars brightened again, as if life was being reignited. Yet any ship that tried to approach vanished without trace. Reland recorded everything, knowing the galaxy would soon need proof. He did not know what the humans planned, but he understood one thing. Whatever they were doing, it was not destruction, it was transformation. The silence that followed was not peace, it was preparation for something greater. And deep inside, he felt that the real meeting between the species had not yet begun. But it was coming soon, and when it came, no one would be ready for it. The sky above the galaxy burned with light as the new human fleet moved like a living wall through the void. And no one could deny it anymore. They were awake. And they were everywhere. Reland's small fleet drifted at the edge of a dying system, watching as the once silent stars came alive one after another. He felt as if the whole galaxy had been waiting for this moment, and now the wait was over. There was no more pretending, no more hiding. Everyone who had ever doubted would soon face. The truth messages filled every channel, from frightened colonies begging for help from governments trying to explain what was happening, from soldiers demanding orders that never came. The Alliance Council had locked itself away, unable to agree on what to do. Some wanted to attack, some wanted to surrender, some simply wanted to disappear. R'Elan knew there was no plan that could stop what was already in motion. He watched the human ships moving with perfect order. No waste, no fear. Their design was beyond anything his people had ever imagined. Massive structures of light and dark metal shaped like wings stretching across the stars, each one surrounded by small escort crafts that moved like birds around their parent. The humans did not speak. They did not send warnings this time. They only acted where they passed. The old relay stations turned on again. Ancient trade routes reopened. Planets once dead came to life, their engines shining through the night. The galaxy was being rewritten, and none of the old races could stop it. R'Elan sat in the command chair, staring at the map that now showed thousands of human signals forming a pattern across the stars. It was not random. It was a circle, a perfect ring around the galactic core. He realized they were building something massive enough to change the balance of everything. One of his officers asked what it meant, and R'Elan said quietly, "They are closing the circle." The officer asked what that would do, but R'Elan had no answer. He only knew it was not for war, at least not yet. It was for control, maybe for protection, maybe for something far beyond any of their understanding. The crew worked in silence, everyone afraid to speak. The tension was heavy. The stars seemed closer than ever. As days passed, R'Elan received broken reports from other systems. Some said the humans had sent drones to rebuild lost cities. Others said they had seen human figures walking on planets that had been lifeless for centuries. But no one could confirm it, because every attempt to approach ended the same way. Ships disappeared, and only silence remained. One strange message came from a remote science outpost on the edge of the Perseus Arm. They claimed they had made contact with a human being, not a machine, but a real one. The message said the human looked young, with clear eyes and calm expression, and that he spoke softly, saying, "Do not fear, the future is not ending. It is beginning." Then the message ended abruptly, and the station was never heard from again. R'Elan knew he could not fight this power, but he also knew the galaxy deserved to understand what was happening. He decided to travel closer to the center of the human circle to see with his own eyes what they were building. His crew begged him not to go, but he said there are moments in history when fear cannot stop the truth. They prepared the ship and entered the long route toward the center. The journey took weeks, passing through abandoned sectors filled with the wrecks of ships from every known race. Some looked centuries old, others still fresh as if destroyed yesterday. But there was no sign of battle, no blast marks, no debris. It was as if life had simply vanished from them, leaving only empty shells drifting in silence as they moved deeper. The stars grew brighter. The space around them hummed with low vibrations like distant music. They began to see faint patterns of light, forming bridges between the stars, beams of energy linking systems together. It was the same pulse that once came from the small sphere, now spread across half the galaxy. Then one day, they saw it ahead of them, a structure so large it defied reason, a ring surrounding the core of the galaxy glowing with white light. The human fleet moved along its surface like ants tending a hive. The scanners could not measure its size. It seemed infinite. R'Elan stood speechless. He knew no living race could build this, not in 1,000 years yet. Here it was, complete, silent, perfect. The ship approached slowly, the systems flickering under the pressure of the immense energy field. Suddenly, a transmission came through, the same calm voice as before, saying, "R'Elan of the Alliance, you have come far. You have seen what others fear. We are not your enemy, but you must understand the truth. We did not vanish, we withdrew. We watched as the galaxy forgot kindness and drowned in greed and war. We waited until it was ready to begin again. Now it is time, the cycle will renew." R'Elan tried to speak, but his voice shook. He asked, "What will happen to the others?" The voice answered, "They will choose. Those who adapt will survive. Those who fight will fade." And the Circle will close when all are in balance again, he asked. What was the circle? And the voice said, It is a bridge, a shield, and a seed, and one day it will bloom into something greater. Before Relon could ask more, the ship was surrounded by light. His crew cried out, but there was no pain. Only a feeling of peace when the light faded. They were somewhere else, floating above a planet. None of them recognized. It was green and full of oceans. The scanners showed it was habitable but empty. No signs of life. The same voice spoke again. This is your new beginning, your world. If you wish it, you may live here. The humans will not harm you. We will watch from afar. The light faded and the massive ring disappeared from their view. The sky was calm again. Relon realized the humans had moved them across the galaxy in a single instant. He looked at his crew, their faces filled with disbelief and awe. Some knelt, others laughed, some cried. He stepped outside and felt the ground under his feet. For the first time in months, it was warm and alive. Days turned into weeks as they began to build small shelters using the ship's remaining supplies. The planet was full of food and clean water, but quiet. No birds, no animals, only wind and stars above. Relon often looked up at the sky at night, hoping to see the ring again. But it never appeared, only faint traces of white light like threads across the heavens. Sometimes he thought he heard voices whispering in the wind. Not words, just feelings of calm and promise. One night, while he walked alone near the shore, he saw a figure standing in the distance, tall and still glowing faintly. He moved closer, but the figure turned and walked away, disappearing into the mist. He knew then that the humans were still watching. Years passed, the survivors built a small city they called Haven. They taught their children stories about the old galaxy, about the fear and the hope, about how one day they had seen the return of the humans. Some believed the humans were gods. Others said they were only people who had learned too much and paid the price. Relon grew older but never stopped thinking about what he had seen. He kept a small recording from the ship showing the first glimpse of the great ring. He watched it every night, remembering the hum of energy, the silence, the voice that spoke of renewal. Sometimes he wondered what had happened to the rest of the galaxy. Maybe the humans had rebuilt it. Maybe they had erased it. Maybe it was still out there waiting in the dark. One morning he woke to a strange light filling the sky, the same white glow he had seen years ago. His heart raced as he stepped outside. The others gathered around, watching as a beam of light reached down from the clouds. It touched the ground near the city, forming a shape. It was not a ship, not a weapon, but a pillar of light inside the light. They saw symbols shifting and changing until they formed words written in every known language. It said, "The circle is complete. The cycle continues live well." Relon smiled. For the first time in years, he understood it was not an ending. It was a new start. The humans had not destroyed. They had restored in their own way. They had given life a chance again. The beam slowly faded, and the sky returned to normal. That night, Relon sat by the shore looking at the stars. The water calm around him. He thought of all that had happened, the wars, the fear, the silence, and now the peace. He whispered softly, "Thank you, though." He knew no one could hear him, but deep inside he felt an answer, not in words but in warmth and light. The galaxy was no longer the same, and neither was he. He closed his eyes, listening to the wind carrying the faint hum of distant engines somewhere far beyond. Sight, the human ship still moved across the void, silent, watchful, eternal.